Well, welcome to the 700 Club. On Monday, Mexico will be hit with import tariffs if it doesn't act to slow down the record number of illegal immigrants crossing into the United States.
One of the top Border Patrol officials says he's never seen anything like it in his 24 years on the job. Jennifer Wishon brings us the story from Washington.
It's a critical day for Mexico. Here in Washington, Mexican officials are at the State Department trying to stave off President Trump's threat of tariffs. This as America's Border Patrol agents face a historic influx of migrants. Despite President Trump's stepped-up enforcement at the border, arrests have nearly doubled over this point last year. The acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection says, "We are in a full-blown emergency, and I cannot say this stronger. The system is broken." And there's no end in sight. This migrant says he left Honduras because life there is very difficult. Another says Mexican officials let this group cross the border because they're peaceful.
They shouldn't be able to walk through Mexico. If you look at that, that's really an invasion without the gun.
And now reports indicate ISIS is eyeing America's southern border. Homeland Security today uncovered at least one plot to send ISIS fighters into the U.S. by way of the nation's porous border with Mexico.
We need Mexico to do more.
Mexico offered to deploy thousands of National Guard troops to its border with Guatemala to help control the flow of migrants, but U.S. officials say that's not enough. The Hill reports the president is ready to declare a national emergency so he can impose major new tariffs on Mexico, a move that will likely face legal challenges. The president plans to levy a 5% tariff on all Mexican goods starting Monday, a tax that would increase 5% each month, maxing out at 25% this fall if a deal isn't reached. That's making Mexican farmers and manufacturers nervous and uniting some Democrats and Republicans who fear economic repercussions here in the U.S.
I'm afraid that it might endanger some American jobs.
It's not a way to deal with immigration.
President Trump says he's forced to take action because Congress is unwilling to address immigration, calling the politics of it all a vicious business. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, it's ultimately the source of the problem. Congress hasn't put together a comprehensive immigration bill, what to do with this problem. And it's been a long-standing problem. This goes back several administrations. This isn't something new. We've had a giant help wanted sign on our southern border, and people have responded to it. We now have one of the largest humanitarian crises the Western Hemisphere has ever seen happening right now in Venezuela, where millions of people are being forced by starvation to leave that country. Add to it the unemployment in Guatemala and Honduras. Those governments have been saying for some time now, please help us with investment. Please help us have jobs in our own country so our people can live. And so it's no wonder they're trying to get to the United States in these caravans of people trying to cross our border. And it is an emergency. You can't understate the incredible need here. But Congress hasn't acted. And it's not just a Democrat versus Republican thing. When the Republicans controlled the Congress for the first 2 years of the current administration, there wasn't anything that moved through in terms of comprehensive immigration reform. What do we do with the problem? So the president has said we're going to start with this tariff. The problem with tariffs is it introduces uncertainty into economic systems. So if you're a business owner and you're looking to invest, do you make that investment now in face of, well, I can't determine what the ultimate price of the goods are going to be? So if you're manufacturing things in Mexico, if it's a joint effort, partly in Mexico, partly in the United States, you're just going to stop until the political uncertainty gets cleared up. That impacts us all. It's going to impact the stock market. It's going to impact our retirement accounts. But more importantly, it's going to impact jobs. So what do we do here? How do we get rid of this logjam? How do we actually have cooperation between Democrats and Republicans? We all need to unite. Our country faces multiple problems on multiple fronts, and all we want to do is have politics of hate and division. It's time for us to heal all of that, and let's start getting the job done. In other news, Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden has reversed himself on a major issue. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington.
That's right, Gordon. Biden is backtracking, changing his position on taxpayer-funded abortions. Only 2 days ago, Biden's campaign confirmed he, at the time, still supported the Hyde Amendment, which bans federal taxpayer dollars paying for abortions. After coming under intense criticism from feminist and pro-abortion groups, two pillars in the Democratic base, the former VP announced the change. Biden, a Roman Catholic, said he makes no apologies for his earlier position, adding that after recent statewide efforts to restrict abortions, he no longer supports the amendment because, quote, circumstances have changed. Well, the case of a Washington state florist who was fined for refusing to make a floral arrangement for same-sex wedding could go back to the Supreme Court. Thursday, Washington State's High Court stood by a 2017 ruling against Barronelle Stutzman. Responding to an order by the Supreme Court to review the decision in light of a similar case in Colorado, the Washington state justices said state agencies were not prejudiced against Stutzman's religious beliefs, and they ruled lower courts weren't hostile to religion in their rulings against her. Stutzman plans to appeal again to the Supreme Court. Well, in addition to the inspirational ceremonies at Normandy Thursday to commemorate D-Day, another gathering took place, this one at the World War II Memorial on the National Mall here in Washington. As Paul Strand reports, there's also a move to make a famous prayer a more permanent part of future remembrances there.
Troops past and present and members of a grateful nation gathered here at the World War II Memorial to remember that June 6th turning point in the global conflict.
160,000 troops landed, and within a couple weeks, over 1 million landed, and within a couple months, they liberated Paris, and within 11 months, they had Hitler bottled up there in Berlin.
President Roosevelt frequently talked to the nation during his fireside chats, but during D-Day, he didn't talk, he prayed for those in the fierce fight.
Some will never return. Embrace these, Father, and receive them, thy heroic servants, into thy kingdom.
President Trump invoked FDR's prayer as he marked the 75th anniversary Wednesday in Portsmouth, England. Here in Washington, Ohio Senator Rob Portman is among many Americans who want to see that prayer placed permanently here at this memorial.
It is a huge part of American history, in my view. On this incredibly important day, a president of the United States chose to invoke the Almighty. He chose to use prayer rather than a speech to inspire the country, to provide protection for these troops.
Chris Long of the Christian Alliance of America points out there's no mention of God at the memorial.
The World War II Memorial is unique in that way. It's one of the memorials that does not have a scripture verse, a prayer, or reference to God anywhere on it. So the idea legislatively 7 years ago was to add FDR's D-Day prayer in its entirety here at the memorial.
You go to Normandy, what do you see? Crosses, 9,000 of them, and Stars of David. These were men and women of faith. And so it's only proper that there should be some acknowledgement of faith at the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Long said of FDR,
he actually hand-wrote the prayer, and it's estimated that 100 million people worldwide heard that prayer that morning.
Some may question adding the prayer to this memorial, but it would always remind the nation that at that destiny-changing moment, America knew it had to rely on more than men and military might. It had to rely on God. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the World War II Memorial.
Thanks, Paul. Well, the city of Virginia Beach hosted a service Thursday night to remember those killed in the mass shooting at the city's government complex last Friday. Heather Sells reports on a night that brought out the best in a community that's witnessed the worst.
Just 1 week after 12 people lost their lives, the city of Virginia Beach hosted a service for people of all faiths to remember.
Several thousand people attended, and while anyone could enter Rock Church, police surrounded the building both on foot and horseback. Service provided an opportunity for people to mourn.
We come together as one community with no division.
We grieve with the families of the victims whose lives will never be the same.
It provided prayers and reflections from a variety of faiths.
May our faith in your sovereignty, God, in your love and your care, give us the humility to recognize that we do not nor may we ever know why some things happen.
And it honored the victims. City council members led a moment of silence for each of the 12 who lost their lives. At the end of the service, the audience gave repeated standing ovations as the vice mayor praised the first responders.
Our wonderful city employees have stepped up, and they've stepped up big time. From the police officers who rushed to the sound of gunfire, to the sheriff's deputies who took control of the city and locked it down. Our emergency response was dynamic, it was impressive, and it saved lives.
Officials also noted that many are still working, investigators trying to understand what motivated the shooter, chaplains supporting victims' families, and city officials encouraging Virginia Beach to move forward.
When you walk through a storm.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Gordon, I watched last night, and it really was a beautiful and touching service.
Well, it was a time for all of us to come together as a community here in Virginia Beach to recognize that in the face of this kind of evil, we stand as one, and we stand to mourn the horrible carnage, the number that were killed, to stand with their families, to let the families know we stand with you, we're going to be with you for the long haul, and then to honor the first responders. Here are people, when they heard gunfire, they ran to it in order to stop that horrible evil, to stop that gunman, to end this carnage. When they heard gunfire, they ran to it to help others, and we wanted to honor them. It was a night of unity, a night of the whole community coming together and saying, we stand strong, and Virginia Beach is strong.